What has your child's school done that got you so mad you went in and read the riot act to the teacher or principal? My daughter called from school saying she'd been suspended for fighting. She wouldn't say much, just that the principal gave her a 2-week suspension. I went home, grounded her, and took her phone. Then calls from other girls started rolling in. Turns out, a jock from a wealthy family had a habit of grabbing girls, and my daughter was one of his targets. She fought back, and he ended up in the ER. I ungrounded her, and she finally told me what happened. The next morning I took her to school, and the principal stopped us at the door, saying she was suspended. I told him we were going to his office, unless he wanted to do this outside. In his office, I told him my daughter's suspension had to be lifted and that the boy had a choice: 30-day suspension with mental evaluation or felony charges. The principal called the boy's mom, who threatened to charge my daughter. I said, "Let the police sort it. Your son has a history, and I have witnesses." Then the principal dropped a bomb. "You don't want to mess with one of the finest families in the city." That's when I realized he was covering for the boy because he was connected to the family. I told him, "I don't make threats, I make promises. Someone needs to teach this kid that this behavior won't be tolerated before he winds up in prison." The boy got suspended, transferred, and my daughter's record was cleared.
My foster parents taught me to fake illness for attention, so I faked it in front of the judge and watched them face 15 years. The Hendersons collected sick kids like trophies. They had the whole routine down: take in foster children with chronic conditions, milk the sympathy, pocket the extra government benefits meant for our medical care. I was their star patient. Type 1 diabetes, severe asthma, anxiety disorder, perfect for their sob story collection. "Remember, sweetheart," Mrs. Henderson would whisper before every doctor visit, "you're getting worse, not better. Mommy needs those disability checks." She taught me to hyperventilate on command, how to make my blood sugar readings look unstable, which symptoms got the most concerned looks from social workers. The training started when I was 8. She'd make me practice in front of the bathroom mirror for hours. "Slower breathing, Emma. You need to look like you're dying, not just tired." If I couldn't produce the right wheeze, she'd make me run laps until my lungs actually burned. "There," she'd say, as I gasped for real. "Remember that feeling?" She had a whole medical vocabulary she'd coached me on. "Tell them the chest pain is sharp, not dull. Sharp gets you admitted faster." She knew which emergency rooms had the most sympathetic staff, which doctors asked the fewest questions. We'd sit in hospital waiting rooms while she performed for other parents. Poor Emma's been in and out of ICU 12 times this year. We're barely surviving financially. Strangers would slip her 20s. Churches would organize fundraisers. The medical bills were always paid by insurance, but she kept the donations. She had a whole rotation of stories. Sometimes I was an orphan whose parents died in a car crash. Sometimes I was abandoned by drug addicts. The details changed, but the tragedy was always fresh enough to make people reach for their wallets. The grocery store was her favorite hunting ground. She'd park me by the pharmacy, tell me to look pale and shaky. "My daughter's diabetic," she'd tell concerned shoppers, "and we can't afford her insulin this month." People would literally hand her cash on the spot. She made $300 once from a single Target run. The other kids caught on. Tommy had fake seizures. Sarah's cancer was just strategic makeup, but I was the crown jewel. Mrs. Henderson would brag to her sister on the phone about how much money my conditions brought in. "Emma's worth more than the other 3 combined. That diabetes is like winning the lottery." She kept detailed records too. Which symptoms worked best in which neighborhoods, how much each emergency room visit netted in sympathy donations. She had a whole Excel spreadsheet tracking our performances. The medical appointments were the worst part. She'd coach me beforehand on exactly what to say, then sit in the room nodding sympathetically while I lied to doctors who genuinely wanted to help. "The seizures are getting worse," I'd say, watching her smile behind the doctor's back. Sometimes I forget whole days. Dr. Martinez, my neurologist, would order expensive tests she knew I didn't need. The insurance covered everything, but she'd tell the billing department we were struggling financially. They'd waive our copays out of pity. She even coached me on how to cry. "Not too much, Emma. You want to look brave, not dramatic. Brave gets you more money." Everything changed when I turned 14 and overheard her laughing on the phone. "The doctors think Emma's dying," she cackled. "This diabetes scam is paying for our vacation to Florida." I found her draft GoFundMe post the next day. "Stage 4 diabetes complications. Emma needs experimental treatment we can't afford. There's no such thing as stage 4 diabetes." She was just making stuff up. When CPS finally investigated, I sat in family court and gave the performance of my lifetime, made myself hyperventilate until I collapsed right in front of the judge. As they handcuffed her, Mrs. Henderson screamed, "You ungrateful brat! I taught you how to get sympathy!" "Yeah," I gasped, "and you taught me exactly who deserved it." 20 years total. Best acting lesson I ever got.
I made $500 by accidentally becoming a wedding crasher's wingman. I was working as a waiter at this fancy hotel when this guy in a perfectly tailored suit walks up to the bar. He looked nervous and kept checking his phone. Something felt off, so I kept an eye on him. The way he scanned the room reminded me of those nature shows where a zebra knows it's in the wrong territory. He ordered a drink and whispered, "I'm not supposed to be here." I laughed and said, "Yeah, I figured. Which wedding?" He pointed to the Hamilton reception and admitted he was trying to impress a girl he met last week who said she'd be here. His voice had that desperate "please help me" tone. Instead of busting him, I had an idea. "Order the salmon," I told him. "The chicken is dry, and the bride's family is sitting on the left. They're all wearing blue. The father of the bride loves talking about his boat collection." His eyes lit up. He slipped me a $50 and said, "Keep them coming." Throughout the night, I fed him little details about the wedding while he smoothly worked the room like he belonged there. Near the end of the night, he came back grinning. The girl had given him her number. He handed me another $450 and said, "For the best service ever." 2 years later, I got a generous tip while working another wedding. I looked up and there he was, this time as the actual groom. He winked and said, "Still ordering the salmon." The bride next to him was the same girl from that night. Sometimes the craziest decisions lead to the best stories.
Have you ever been blamed for something just because you were born? Growing up, I noticed Dad's hands would shake whenever someone mentioned family reunions. He'd excuse himself to the bathroom and come back with red eyes. Mom would quickly change the subject. Every Christmas, packages arrived for my sister, Lyra, from relatives. Cards with $20 bills, stuffed animals, books. My name was never on anything. When I asked why, Mom said they must have forgotten. But you don't forget the same kid for 15 years straight. At school events, I'd see other families, grandparents cheering at soccer games, aunts and uncles taking photos. Our section was always just Mom and Dad. When friends asked about my extended family, I'd lie and say they lived far away. Dad's phone would ring at dinner. He'd glance at the caller ID, his face would drain of color, and he'd send it straight to voicemail. This happened 3 or 4 times a week. When I asked who kept calling, he'd mutter something about telemarketers and pour himself another drink. Lyra got invited to cousin Aria's Sweet 16. The invitation was addressed to the Merrick family, but when we showed up, Uncle Darian pulled Dad aside. They had a heated, whispered conversation by the coat check. We left before the cake was even cut. Facebook made everything worse. I could see my cousins posting pictures from family gatherings. Birthday parties, graduations, holidays, dozens of relatives I'd never met, all laughing and hugging. Lyra was in some photos from when she was little. I was never there. When Grandpa Elias died last year, we found out from Lyra's friend who saw it on Instagram. No one called us. No one told us about the funeral. Dad locked himself in his room for 3 days. I could hear him crying through the walls. I started asking direct questions. Why don't we see Dad's family? Mom would get flustered, say it was complicated, that some families just drift apart. But Lyra pulled me aside one night. She remembered things I didn't. She remembered being at family parties when we were really little. She remembered suddenly stopping going. The breaking point came when I applied for colleges. I needed family medical history forms filled out. Dad couldn't answer basic questions about his side. When I pressed him, he snapped. Just put unknown for everything, okay? That night, I heard Mom and Dad fighting downstairs. Mom was crying, saying something about 17 years of this silence, and when does it end? Dad kept repeating, they made their choice, over and over. I started digging through old boxes in the basement, photo albums from when Lyra and I were babies. There were pictures of Dad's family holding us, smiling. Then suddenly, around age 2, all those faces disappeared from our photos. Last week, I found Dad going through those same boxes. He was holding a yellow hospital bracelet with my name on it. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. When he saw me watching, he tried to shove it back in the box. Dad, what's wrong? He sat down heavily, still clutching that tiny bracelet. Son, your uncle, Jalen, died the night you were born. Uncle Jalen. I'd heard his name whispered occasionally, always followed by immediate silence. Jalen was driving to the hospital to meet you. He was so excited to be an uncle. It was snowing, and he hit black ice on the highway. Dad's voice cracked. My family blamed me, said if I hadn't called him so late, if I hadn't made such a big deal about you being born, he would have waited until morning. Every missed birthday, every empty chair, every avoided phone call suddenly made sense. At Jalen's funeral, my father looked at me holding you and said, that baby cost us our son. My mother never spoke to me again. Dad looked at me with 17 years of guilt and pain in his eyes. They still blame me? He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Some people need someone to blame when tragedy strikes. Unfortunately, that someone was you.